So if you study the Vedic literatures, such as Srimad Bhagavad-Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, etc., you'll see how Krishna actually fits that, meets that criterion. There's more than ample information to go on. You don't have to accept blindly. So it behooves one in the human form of life to utilize his intelligence and do some research into the Vedic literatures, which is the oldest body of knowledge on the planet, practically speaking. This is the standard of real literature. Here we are today, more than 5,000 years later, after Krishna is speaking Gita to Arjuna, and still relishing. This is the standard of real literature. It stands the test of time. Sometimes Prabhupada would give some simple example or comparison, just like the newspaper. He says, practically speaking, there's no value there, it's rubbish. Or if you want to insist that there's some value there, at least in the Western countries, a boy may come early in the morning and throw the newspapers on the people's doorsteps, those who have subscriptions to the newspapers. And then the people, they will get their newspaper, and by 10 o'clock or so, whatever so-called value was there is finished. But here's a literature more than 5,000 years later, still being relished, with even more delight and vigor. So this is the standard of real literature. And this is real philosophy also. Strictly speaking, in a sense, Krishna's philosophy is real philosophy, and all other philosophies are simply mental speculation of one kind or another. So in the verse tonight, we'll hear how the devotees, Prabhupada mentions in the purport, they welcome the descriptions of Krishna and what he means by Krishna himself. That is most authoritative. Who knows better than the person himself? And the devotees heartily welcome these explanations and descriptions from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The demoniac populace, they do not welcome them so much. They're addicted to speculation, and they want to simply study everything from their own standpoint. They've already made up their minds in one sense. There is no absolute truth, or at least there is no personal aspect. And so they study from this viewpoint, already contaminated from the beginning. At least if one has a little bit of initial faith, he can understand Bhagavad-Gita. It doesn't take a lot, and doesn't have to be blind. Simply this much, that you can say to yourself, I don't know for sure. This body of knowledge, this age-old body of knowledge, is claiming Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I don't know one way or the other. I don't really know. But maybe it's true. Maybe, because this long line of authorities who are accepting it as such. And if I study their lives a little bit, I become very influenced that yes, these are very learned and realized personalities. So there must be something to this. So if one can just muster up a little bit of faith like this, I don't know for sure, but maybe there's something to this. That's all. That's not a lot to ask. If you can muster up that little bit of initial faith, then you can understand. You can understand Bhagavad-Gita. But if you're not even willing to give it that much, you'll never understand. And why not give it that much? All great personalities we have in our line, all the acharyas, the mahajans, etc., they are all putting forward this knowledge. You study their lives, you study their teachings, and in this way you become convinced of their knowledgeable and realized positions, and therefore you take serious or take to heart the message of Srimad Bhagavad-Gita on their strength, you could say. So just now we're in the 4th chapter, and tonight's text is number 4. So I'll just read the Sanskrit myself. Of course, I may not pronounce everything exactly perfectly, but I try. I'm not a Sanskrit scholar. There are so many Sanskrit scholars. You may have a PhD in Sanskrit, But that doesn't make you a realized soul. It's not simply a matter of learning A, B, C, D. You have to submit. This is the process of parampara, or descending, the absolute truth descending, and knowledge of the absolute truth descending from a perfect source, from the original source, Lord Krishna himself. So you have to submit to that process. Receive your knowledge coming down instead of trying to ascend by your speculative processes. And the speculative processes are faulty by nature. Whatever particular one it may be, doesn't really matter that much, because what are you using to speculate with? You're using your imperfect senses. You're subject to illusion. You commit mistakes, and you don't like to admit it, but you also have a cheating propensity. So if that's all you have to work with, how far are you going to get? So at least if one is honest, one would have to admit that at least if I could receive it coming down from a perfect source unchanged, then at least in that way there's a chance. The other way there is no chance. But again, you don't have to accept blindly. Krishna speaks so much philosophy. That's for the satisfaction of our intelligence. So okay, I'll just read the verse here. Krishna speaking, or actually, excuse me, this is Arjuna speaking. Arjuna uvacha aparam bhavato janma param janma vivas vataha katam etad vijaniyam tom adel proktavan iti. And then I'll read the synonyms, or the word meanings. Arjuna uvacha, Arjuna said, aparam, junior, bhavataha, your, janma, birth, param, superior, janma, birth, vivasvataha, of the sun god, katam, how, etat, this, vijaniyam, shall I understand, tvam, you, adal, in the beginning, proktavan, introduced, iti, thus. And the translation, Arjuna said, the sun god of Viththaleshvar is senior by birth to you. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed this science to him? So this seems like a very intelligent question. The ordinary person would wonder, how is that? So Srila Prabhupada's purport, Arjuna is an accepted devotee of the Lord, so how could he not believe Krishna's words? The fact is that Arjuna is not inquiring for himself, but for those who do not believe in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or for the demons who do not like the idea that Krishna should be accepted as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For them only, Arjuna inquires on this point, as if he were himself not aware of the personality of Godhead Krishna. As it will be evident from the 10th chapter, Arjuna knew perfectly well that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the fountainhead of everything, and last word in transcendence. Of course, Krishna also appeared as the son of Devaki on this earth. How Krishna remained the same Supreme Personality of Godhead, the eternal original person, is very difficult for an ordinary man to understand. So I'm thinking to take this purport in stages. So we'll stop here and just try to speak a little bit about what's been mentioned thus far. Omagya Chanandasya Gananjana Sadakaya Taksu Unmanitam Yena Tasmai Sigurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master came and forced open my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. So Arjuna is asking the Lord, frankly, wait a second, you're saying you spoke to Viththaleshvar on this knowledge, but how am I to understand that? Because he's senior in birth to you. So Prabhupada makes a statement here that it'll be evident that Arjuna was inquiring not for himself, but for others. especially demoniac personalities. And the evidence for that is he mentions that it will be evident from the 10th chapter. So far I understand he's referring to, there is what is called the Chatur Slokas of the Gita, 8, 9, 10, and 11. And then Arjuna's reply to those in 12 and 13, I believe, is what Srila Prabhupada is referring to, where he shows very well that he knew Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyhow, what he states there is that Arjuna Uvacha Param Brahma Param Dhamma Pavitam Paramam Bhavan Purusham Sasitam Divyam Adidevam Jan Vibhum Ahushal Vishara Sarve Devarshir Naradas Tata Vasito Devalo Vyasa Swayam Chabhavivishime. Arjuna said, O Krishna, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, the purest. You are the eternal, transcendental, original person, the unborn, the greatest. All the great sages, such as Sita, Devala, Narada, Vyas, confirm this truth about you, and now you yourself are declaring it to me. So these are the words of the same Arjuna. So this is one evidence that he knew very well, and therefore he was inquiring for the benefit of others who may not be so convinced, especially those of a demoniac nature. So we'll see how Krishna tells him that, we know the upcoming verses basically, that yes, my Arjuna, actually many lives you and I have lived. I can remember all of them, but you cannot. So this is the initial beginning reply to this question. How could you have taught him? He's senior in birth to you. Well, Krishna is senior to the entire material world, basically speaking. So the devotees heartily welcome Krishna's own explanations about himself. This is what Arjuna is setting it up so Krishna can speak authoritatively about himself. When Krishna speaks about himself, and when his bona fide representatives in Parampara also speak about him, that is bona fide. Outsiders cannot do so. Sometimes Prabhupada will give some very simple examples to help illustrate this. Just like if you belong to a particular family, you're part of that family. You can speak authoritatively about the head of that family. Outsiders cannot. They're just guessing at best because they're not part of that family. So being linked up in Parampara means being linked up in Krishna's family once again. And therefore you're hearing in Parampara, therefore you can speak authoritatively. Although it is a fact that we are still limited to some extent, because we also still have imperfect senses, subject to illusion, commit mistakes, and have a cheating propensity. But as long as we repeat the message as it is, we can put it in our own words, our own language, as long as we don't change the message. As long as we do not change the message, then we can also say that which is perfect, although we ourselves are not perfect. As long as we do not present something new or subtract something, we can also do like that. Just like Krishna, Srila Prabhupada told us that you can read Srimad Bhagavad-Gita for your entire life repeatedly, and you'll get newer and newer lights. Newer and newer lights means newer and newer realizations. Not imaginations, realizations. And they can be validated. You can check. We have a system of checks and balances. You can check them against Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. You check these three transcendental references against each other. And if they are all in agreement, then you can feel safe in accepting the validity of any particular description or statement or your understanding, etc. But if they don't all three agree, then at least there's room for doubt, if not sometimes rejection. So this is kind of our system of staying on the safe side of things in the material world, especially in the neophyte stage. So we should take advantage of this. We should not simply refer upon our limited and meager intelligence alone. In one sense, these three are one. I think I may have described this last time I gave a Gita class here, that in order to be recognized as a qualified guru or sadhu, you must speak on the authority of Shastra. You can't just make things up. You must. Otherwise, you're to be rejected. And in the Shastra itself, there is also descriptions of the lives, examples, and teachings of who? Gurus and sadhus, basically. So in that sense, they are one, you could say. But just to be on the safe side, especially in the neophyte stage, we check all three sources against each other. Do they all agree or not? Like I was saying, if they do, we can feel confident in accepting the validity of whatever was described or stated. And if they don't, there should at least be a little doubt there if we're intelligent. And sometimes we have to reject. Like that. The real sadhu, the real guru, he's not an upstart. He does not introduce something new. Of course, he has his own personality. Just like the sages of Naimisharanya, when Sutta Goswami entered their midst, they knew that he was previously hearing the conversation going on between Maharaj Parikshit and Sukadeva Goswami. So this is one of the reasons they chose to elect him to the Vyasa sign to hear from. But they also insisted that he give his own sweet realizations, not that he just simply repeat like a parrot. So this means that they were confident, fully confident, that he was bona fide. Otherwise, how could they make such a request sincerely unless they were confident like that? So we probably all know the example in Nature's Way, of course by Krishna's ultimate arrangement, that when a certain kind of parrot breaks the skin of a fruit with its beak, the sweetness is enhanced even more so. Even though it was already fully sweet, it's enhanced even more so. So the Bhagavatam is unlimitedly sweet, of course, but when it's touched by the lips of a devotee, not just some mundane scholar or some kind of materialistic upstart, but a genuine devotee in parampara, then the unlimited sweetness is enhanced even more so. So logically, materially speaking, it doesn't make much sense because we're trying to compare our experiences within the material world. But the spiritual world and the spiritual nature doesn't play by the same rules. There's different rules. Something unlimited in the spiritual nature can still increase even more. Materially, that doesn't make any sense. If it's unlimited, there's no more room to expand. But again, the spiritual nature doesn't play by the same rules. So we'll not speculate our way to this understanding. We have to receive it coming down, descending from that perfect source, and unchanged. Sometimes a simple example of this is given just like in a mango tree. Someone can climb the tree and throw mangoes down, but many of the mangoes will get smashed on the ground or at least bruised. But if you put many people in the tree and one person hands the mango down to the person directly below him, very carefully, on down, all the way down to the ground, then all the mangoes are intact. There's no bruising, there's no smashing. They're still as they are. So this is a kind of simplistic way of understanding parampara. And this is Krishna's arrangement, how we are to receive this understanding. In his disciplic succession. Also it's described that there may be so many, sometimes the personalities in the chain are described as links in the chain, just like a chain has so many links. But although there are so many links in the chain or so many personalities in the line, you could say, still the connection is direct. And without being connected in that bona fide line or chain, there is no connection. One time Srila Prabhupada was talking with one man, and it came up that, well, what about without Guru? And Prabhupada said, without Guru, forget it. Forget it, he said like that. There is no connection. This is Krishna's own prescription. We haven't made it up just to suit ourselves. And there are so many verses to attest to this. We all know the verse, probably, or familiar a little bit with Tabadi padipatina padipasnena sevaya upadiksanti te jnanam janinas tattva darshinaha, where Krishna says to just try to learn the truth. How? By approaching a spiritual master, he says it. And then what? Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. So this is Krishna's own prescription. So we have to come to Krishna according to Krishna's method, Krishna's dictation, not our whimsical idea. If we insist on our own whimsical idea, then we simply reveal ourselves as being disingenuous. Krishna says like this, but I'm insisting on something else. No, not at all. Krishna also wants to see what we are willing to do and what we are willing to forego in order to perfect our lives and learn what is the absolute truth. That is the real test, you could say. Otherwise, his ordinary saying is that words are cheap, or lip service is cheap. You can say anything, and people do. But what are you willing to actually do? And what are you willing to actually give up or forego in order to achieve this highest goal of life? That's the real test, you could say. Just as Srila Prabhupada was he was entertaining a few guests in Los Angeles, California, in USA. The devotees had a nice little outside garden area arranged for Srila Prabhupada, where he would meet with guests and devotees. So these persons who came to speak with Prabhupada, they were scholars of theology. They're called theologians. And the conversation was going on, and at one point Srila Prabhupada told them point blank, "You're not theologians, you're theosophists." So the eldest scholar, I think his name was still from Judah, he said, "Actually, Prabhupada, that's true. We don't really know God. We know of God, but we can't say we know God. That's actually true." And so a little later on in the conversation, Prabhupada was saying to them, and revealing their actual position, you could say, that if you're really actually looking for something, and you find that something, then what is your difficulty in accepting it? And again, the elder scholar volunteered reply that, "Well, Srila Prabhupada, you know how it is, especially those of us who are in the older generation, we've become very set in our ways, and it's difficult to change." And at that point, Srila Prabhupada said, not even willing to consider a change in lifestyle to make spiritual advancement means, by definition, you're not serious. You're not serious. You just take the hearing of these spiritual topics and discussing them a little bit with your students as some kind of armchair recreation. Otherwise, it would have an effect on your life. You'd be taking it up. So we are not meant to become armchair speculators, but we should be serious. We should put all this into practice. And when you put it into practice, of course with understanding, then realization comes. Not otherwise. Otherwise, we all probably know the example, just as bees are trying to have a taste of honey by licking on the outer surface of a closed jar of honey. Can they have a taste in that way? No. The jar has to be opened and they have to voluntarily enter, then they can have a taste. So we have to enter, but not blindly, otherwise why Krishna speaks Bhagavad-Gita? Why does he give so much philosophical knowledge? To convince us that this is something that should be pursued. The intelligence has to be satisfied. So, and Krishna is also willing to further describe any particular point for Arjuna. Several times he asked Arjuna like this in different ways. And Prabhupada points out in one place that if necessary, Krishna was willing to explain the entire Gita to Arjuna, if necessary. He was willing to do like that. So many times in Srila Prabhupada's lectures also, sometimes he would pause and say, is it clear? He wanted some connection there. He wanted you to have an understanding. Another time Srila Prabhupada said, if I just sit up here on this seat speaking big sounding words and nobody understands a damn thing, then what's the point? What is the use? So Prabhupada was also very expert in the science of communication. There's so many different examples of that. Just now I'm recalling that one time Srila Prabhupada was invited to speak at an elementary school, a school for young children, and Prabhupada accepted the invitation. So when he went there, the teacher, one lady, he said to her, any of the students here you consider a little bit intelligent? So she motioned for one small boy to come forward. And Srila Prabhupada said, I'm going to ask you a few questions, you answer me, and while I'm asking you the questions, I'll be pointing, and you point just like I do, and answer my questions. So the boy said, all right. And Prabhupada said, what is this? And points. And the boy also does like this, points. And he answers, this is my head. What are these? These are my eyes. These are my glasses. This is my nose. These are my arms, my chest, my legs, etc. And the whole thing altogether, what is this? This is my body. And then Prabhupada stopped pointing and asked another question. Or actually, he requests, now point to yourself. And the boy hesitated and he thought, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm none of these things, I'm not the whole thing all put together. And then it came out of him. Prabhupada brought it out of this young schoolboy. He never heard this before in his life. And he actually said it, I'm not this body. That's an expert in communication. A young schoolboy. And Prabhupada was able to bring that understanding out. Such intelligence. It seems almost simplistic, you know, I'm not this, I'm not that. But Prabhupada was so expert. And like Krishna, he is willing to re-explain and over-explain any particular point or all of his teachings if necessary. We know Prabhupada never stopped. He was always doing like this. Even in his last days, he was always speaking his purports on the Srimad Bhagavatam like this. Prabhupada was like an open book. He wasn't like different privately than he was publicly. Like others, some others do like that. They put on some show externally, but in their private life, it's completely different. And so many of them are complete debauchees, engaging in illicit sexual affairs and intoxication, etc., simply making some show externally. But Srila Prabhupada, he was the same. He was not. There was nothing fake about Srila Prabhupada, and so Prabhupada became endeared to so many, especially those who were a little bit sincere about perfecting their lives. So another point here about Arjuna inquiring on behalf of others. Prabhupada's making this claim in the purport, although it's not in the verse. But these things, all you have to do, as he said here, you first to the 10th chapter, and you look up the verses, as I already quoted verses 12 and 13 of the 10th chapter. There's one other example I was thinking of this. Well, there are probably more than one other. One I was just thinking of is that in the first chapter, Prabhupada describes that Arjuna, he's losing all composure, even his Gandiva bow is slipping from his hands, his skin is burning, all these things are there. And then Prabhupada mentions in the purport, it's not mentioned in the verse, but one can easily imagine that he was also crying. But it's not mentioned in the verse. But then when you finally get to chapter 2, it's described that Sanjaya said, seeing Arjuna full of compassion, his mind depressed, his eyes full of tears. There it is. Madhusudana to Krishna spoke the following words. So As devotees, we have full confidence in the words of Srila Prabhupada, but we're also gladdened when we see the actual proof of it, so to speak. Just like there was one time when I believe it was a snake or a scorpion, I forget which, entered the courtyard of one of the Gaudiya Math temples, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur came out and he ordered it be killed. And so Prabhupada said this was a kind of a doubt. Of course, it wasn't exactly like the way we doubt. But then he ran across a verse where it's described that even saintly persons are gladdened when an envious creature like a snake or scorpion is killed. Like that. So it may not be apparent immediately, but it is just now coming, so to speak. Evidence is more than amply availed. So I'll continue on with the purport here where I left off. Let's see. Of course, Krishna also appeared as the son of Devaki on this earth. How Krishna remained the same Supreme Personality of Godhead, the eternal original person, is very difficult for an ordinary man to understand. Therefore, to clarify this point, Arjuna put this question before Krishna so that he himself could speak authoritatively. That Krishna is the supreme authority is accepted by the whole world, not only at present, but from time immemorial. And the demons alone reject him. Anyway, since Krishna is the authority accepted by all, Arjuna put this question before him in order that Krishna would describe himself without being depicted by the demons, who always try to distort him in a way understandable to the demons and their followers. So they always want to distort, and sometimes they may not even be fully aware of this. This comes due to envy. Because inherently you know that if I accept Krishna, or if I just accept that there is a supreme person, absolute truth, then inherently one knows that that means part of that is that I have to surrender to that person, and I don't want to do that. Therefore, I just deny his existence. The envy can cloud our vision so much so. So I'll continue reading on here. It is necessary that everyone, for his own interest, know the science of Krishna. Therefore, when Krishna himself speaks about himself, it is auspicious for all the worlds. To the demons, such explanations by Krishna himself may appear to be strange, because the demons always study Krishna from their own standpoint. But those who are devotees heartily welcome the statements of Krishna when they are spoken by Krishna himself. The devotees will always worship such authoritative statements of Krishna because they are always eager to know more and more about him. The atheists who consider Krishna an ordinary man may in this way come to know that Krishna is superhuman, that he is Satchidananda Vigraha, the eternal form of bliss and knowledge, that he is transcendental, and that he is above the domination of the modes of material nature and above the influence of time and space. So also these descriptions are coming from the dictation of Vedavyas. So one may not know who Vedavyas is. But if one learns of who Vedavyas actually is, then he's not apt to take these descriptions very lightly. Where can you find a scholar, a greater scholar than Vedavyas at present day? Not even close, no one. He is the author of the Vedanta Sutra, of which even some materialistic scholars laud as the perfect theistic, as the perfect philosophical treatise ever written. And so he's also the author here. He is the author of the Mahabharata, in which one of the central chapters is what? Bhagavad-Gita. So we should not take him seriously in one place and not serious in another. What is that? That doesn't make any sense. So such a personality as Vyasadeva, we study his life a little bit and his writings, then fairly soon, fairly quickly on, we come to understand it's obvious that such an exalted personality doesn't have time to waste with fictitious writings, made up stories, Hindu fairy tales, or exaggerated claims, etc. Because he is of such a high caliber and of such high realization that obvious he doesn't have time to waste in such things. Therefore, although many of these descriptions are beyond our experience and even the estimation of our imagination, that's not enough of a reason to reject them. Again, they're coming from Vyas, so therefore that should carry some weight. Another way of describing Guru is heavy. Heavy with what? Heavy with knowledge and realization. So Vyasadeva is heavy. He's not a lightweight. Not at all by any measure. Therefore we should take it seriously. Even some of the claims by the scientific community are a little bit bizarre, but they try to dress it up with scientific jargon to make it sound very intelligent. But many times they're simply describing things that, just like their idea that ultimately everything comes from nothing. But they dress it up in complicated scientific jargon in so many different ways. So this is not any more of a stretch of the imagination than that. In fact, that's more of a stretch of the imagination. Many times they'll say it is artificial and imaginary to think that there is personality behind everything. They say that's all imagination. That's for less intelligent people who have to believe in personality. But we know that there's natural laws of nature. But what do they mean by natural? They mean impersonal. That's what they mean. But Prabhupada would describe in a very simplistic way, but nevertheless powerful way, that no, that is not our experience. Just in an ordinary city, you have your electric plant, you have your water works, your gas works, etc. And there are people behind these things. They're not going on haphazardly, automatically. And ultimately there's a mayor, a governor, etc. So if in one simplistic city, on this one little planet, it takes so much intelligence, so many persons behind it all, then what to speak of the entire cosmos? Must be. There must be intelligence there, and intelligence infers what? Person. But again, we don't like to admit that sometimes, because if we know if I admit that, that means I'm supposed to surrender to that person. I don't want to do that. But Krishna attracts us to the surrendering process in different ways. Just like I think Abhay Prabhu touched on a little bit the other night in class, that Krishna sees that his most confidential, dearest devotees, Srimati Radhika and her confidentes, the gopis, that they're experiencing a pleasure millions of times greater than him. And he thinks, well, wait a second, what's this? I'm the ultimate supreme enjoyer. So how can that be that they're experiencing a pleasure greater than me, millions of times greater? How is that? So immediately he knows, well, I'm the absolute truth, and I'm full and complete. I must be, otherwise how can else can I be the absolute truth? So that means I can't be lacking in anything, including this particular experience. So he knows, but I can't have it as Krishna. How can I have it? Of course he knows that I have to voluntarily take the position of my own devotee. Then I can have it only in that way. And so he is irresistibly attracted to do that. And the manifestation of that is Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That his spreading of the Sankirtan movement was a secondary reason for his descent. The main reason was to take the position of Radhika, to understand her feelings of ecstasy, etc., and also just to have her experience for himself. That's how attractive pure devotional service is. Even the all-attractive personality is attracted to have that experience for himself. So one of the lessons there is that That's the highest thing. There can be nothing higher. Even the supreme enjoyer, the supreme all attractive, this is what he's going for. So it must be the greatest thing. So if we settle ourselves for anything less, we're cheating ourselves. We're shortchanging ourselves. It's a little bit stupid, actually. But the supreme enjoyer, he is irresistibly attracted to this. So just like sometimes the various kinds of impersonalists, they want to become God. But Prabhupada would sometimes describe, but a devotee, he can become superior. Just like Nanda Maharaj or Jasoda Mai, sometimes they want to chastise Krishna, but out of bhakti, out of love for Krishna. And so what to speak of becoming one with, the devotee can become superior to. So if you want to look at it from this particular angle, like that. So the devotee's position is superior in every aspect. Sometimes, of course, in the West there are no hardcore Mayavadis, but there are various self-styled impersonalists. Vishnu John Swami one time was asking Prabhupada, relating to him, that sometimes people say that the absolute truth is or can be realized as a clear white light. So Prabhupada initially said, that's less intelligent. But he didn't leave it at that, he explained. And he gave a very nice, easy to understand example. Just like in the evening, if you go to a railway station and everybody is waiting for the train, what's the first thing you see? You see the big bright light in front of the train. So a fool, a rascal, he will say a light is coming. But one who knows things as they are, he'll say a train's coming. And then everyone laughs a little bit, because it should be obvious, but it's not obvious to many people. No, a train is coming. A light is simply one aspect, and it's not the ultimate aspect. It is simply barely touching the spiritual focus. A little further advances the Paramatma, and then finally there is the Supreme Person, Bhagavan. We know the simple examples. Also, Prabhupada would make comparisons like to the sun. Also, you can say, has three different aspects. There is the sunshine, is all-pervasive, glaring effulgence, can be compared to those who can realize only the Brahman feature. A little bit further advanced, one realizes that plus the sun disk, and that can be compared to those who realize the Paramatma feature of the Lord. And then there are those who realize the effulgence, the disk, and the sun planet and the inner affairs of the sun planet, and that there's a sun god, a predominating deity. And so that is compared to the devotees who realize the personal feature of the Lord, the Bhagavan feature. And when you get this realization, automatically the other realizations are included. Prabhupada would sometimes explain it just like if you have $1,000, all your $5 and $10 problems are solved. It's included. But one who has Brahman realization, he doesn't have Paramatma or Bhagavan, or one has Paramatma realization doesn't have Bhagavan. But if you have Bhagavan, everything's included. Like this. These are simply different aspects of Krishna. So Krishna is the ultimate aspect as the supreme enjoyer. And we can revive, we also have an original relationship with him. And that is considered the success of life, to do like that. To come out of the repetition of samsara, repeated birth and death. And what is happening in between birth and death? Well, disease and old age. There's a little bit of sense gratification there. This is called chapalasukha. But it simply serves to agitate you even more. You get a little gratification of your senses, but then it doesn't last. It fades and then it's gone. It vanishes. It leaves you even more agitated. Sometimes people say that, like, better I didn't have it in the first place to have had it and now lost it. But real pleasure is not dependent on the opposite, suffering. Is of a completely different standard. The more we give of ourselves to Krishna, he gives himself to us. That is the greatest gain, and is considered the most valuable thing. In the Nectar of Devotions, it's described like this, that something that's very valuable, one of its features is that it's rarely achieved. So Krishna, or love for Krishna, is not a cheap thing. Because by getting it, Krishna, what do you get? Krishna gives himself to the devotee. So you must be willing to give yourself without seeking anything in remuneration, in return, materially speaking. Simply come to the point of desiring Krishna's pleasure only, to please Krishna and to have his association like this. And then Krishna is impressed, you could say. Otherwise, how are you going to impress him? He's Bhagavan. Just like even a man in this world, a multi-billionaire, let's say. What are you going to give him? He has everything already. But sometimes Prabhupada explained that if you compliment his dog, says he has a nice dog, he may like you. Or you may satisfy his young child by giving the child like a 10-cent piece of candy, and the child smiles, then he's happy with you. So in a similar fashion, we please the Lord's pure representative, pure transparent via medium, the spiritual master in parampara, and if he is pleased, then we know Krishna is pleased. We don't have to guess about it like that. And the pleasure of the spiritual master is that the disciples, the devotees, are invoking or reawakening their love for Krishna, their attraction for Krishna, and making spiritual advancement. That's his pleasure. He's not any kind of a separatist of any kind. So I didn't quite finish the purport here. I'll finish it up now. Let's see. All right. The devotees will always worship such authoritative statements of Krishna because they are always eager to know more and more about him. So also we should not simply, of course I'm not saying this to you, but there are those who are attracted to simply jumping to the 10th canto and especially the chapters dealing with the Rasa Leela. But a real devotee wants to know everything about Krishna. So we study the Bhagavatam in its entirety, from the first canto, taken in small installments, Prabhupada would say, if you're actually serious. Of course, you take advantage, even in the beginning, he gave us the Krishna book, but all interwoven within the narration was his Bhakti-Vedanta purported explanations and descriptions, so we wouldn't get any strange or wrong ideas. And at the same time, that we should also make a study from the beginning. We want to know everything in connection with Krishna, not just Rasa Leela. Okay, so the atheists who consider Krishna an ordinary man may in this way come to know that Krishna is superhuman, that he is Satchidananda Vigraha, the eternal form of bliss and knowledge, that he is transcendental, and that he is above the domination of the modes of material nature, and above the influence of time and space. So these are simply different energies of Krishna, so he is not controlled by them. A devotee of Krishna, like Arjuna, is undoubtedly above any misunderstanding of the transcendental position of Krishna. Arjuna's putting this question before the Lord is simply an attempt to, by the devotee, to defy the atheistic attitude of persons who consider Krishna to be an ordinary human being, subject to the modes of material nature. So Prabhupada revisits this point as he made it earlier in the purport. And let me read the translation once again. Arjuna said, "The sun god Viththaleshvar is senior by birth to you. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed this science to him?" So this is the science of self-realization and simultaneous God realization. That is who we are. We are Krishna's parts and parcels. And so therefore it's in our self-interest, because of that, to serve him. And only in that way can we actually find fulfillment and satisfaction. Because acting contrary to that is acting outside of one's constitutional position, Swarup Siddhi, perfection of one's constitutional position. That is not our actual identification. We've lost sight of our real identification. And so Bhagavad-Gita, although it is described as preliminary understanding, ABCs, still it's a very lofty literature. First thing it tries to do, or not tries, but it very potently does, bring us off the bodily platform, at least theoretically, at least philosophically, and in that way enable us to focus our attention on transcendence without being bothered by the intelligence. The intelligence has to be satisfied. If not, we'll always be in the mode of hesitation and doubt to one degree or another. Therefore, Krishna has to speak this knowledge, this understanding. Arjuna does not fall into illusion, but Krishna chooses him for the speaking of Bhagavad-Gita, and he puts Arjuna into a kind of illusion, or covering, you could say, just so he could bring out all the doubts and questions that we would, and more. And if we follow along in which Srila Prabhupada sometimes would describe as the lotus footprints of Arjuna, then also we actually we rise to higher and higher platforms of Krishna consciousness. Of course, it's taking us a little bit longer. The whole conversation of the Gita between Krishna and Arjuna took place in less than an hour, and Arjuna is back to fully back to his original constitutional position. It's taking us repeated readings, repeated discussing. But still, we can make all perfection in whatever remainder we have of this short lifespan. Most people in the human form of life in this age of Kali don't live beyond 100, and most people don't make it that far. But it is possible to make all success in whatever the remainder of time we have. Prabhupada told us like this. He actually ordered his disciples and followers, wind up your business once and for all, your so-called business in the material world, and go back home, back to Godhead. So he doesn't give such an order or instruction doesn't have any meaning. He wouldn't say that if it wasn't possible. With the order and the instruction comes the empowerment to actually attain that. It's included within the order, within the instruction. One simply has to take it to heart. And then all success is guaranteed, practically speaking. In any case, the devotee is always the gainer. We know how it's explained elsewhere that even if one does not make 100% success, he's not the loser. He's given a chance to resume his progress in the next life, which means at the least you get the human form of life again and the opportunity to resume your progress. If you made 30% progress, let's just call it that, you're given the chance to resume from 31%. You don't have to start from zero again. So the devotee, especially, he's always the gainer, whereas the materialist is always the loser. But of course the materialist is thinking backwards. He's thinking the devotees are the losers. Hey, you loser, Hare Krishna, why don't you get a real life? Why don't you get a real life, sir? Who are you? What do you mean, who I am? And he'll tell you his name, or he'll show you his ID, or his passport. So many designations. I'm a man, a woman, black, white, short, thin, etc. Having nothing to do with who that person is. Simply making some descriptions of the temporary tabernacle, the body in which they are inhabiting. So we should at least ourselves be coolly and calmly convinced we have the real life, and we know who we are, and therefore we can act accordingly. The process of Vaidhi Bhakti, Sananda Bhakti, reintroduces us to Krishna and his devotional service. It is not an artificial imposition on the mind, as Prabhupada will point out. Rather, it is the natural energy of every living being. And with a little so-called practice, it is revived once again. Otherwise, you could practice forever. If that innate capacity was not there already, nothing would happen. But we see that it does. Causes knowledge and a sense of detachment from the world begins to develop in our person and in the persons of other sadhakas, other practitioners, devotees around us. This is hands-on experiential. Therefore, this is testimony that this is real, this is hands-on. It's not just theory by itself. there's also room for practical experience and realization in degrees as we progress. And this fixes our confidence that I'm on solid ground here. It's not just some empty wishful thinking. It's hands-on, tangible. Just like Prabhupada also described that when he first came to the West, especially in New York City, and the young hip generation, as they were called at the time, didn't accept anything or anyone as authority at all. And sometimes they would put forward to Srila Prabhupada that we are young, and our parents and grandparents have made the world in such a precarious condition, such a dangerous position. There may be some war or something like this will break out at any time. So better we gratify our senses to the maximum now while we still can, and while we have full strength of the senses while we're young. And so Prabhupada replied to that with a question of his own. What if there is soul? And why not suppose that there is soul? And then he began to describe the nature of the self. It's not that we have a soul, we are a soul. And we are not this body. It's like a temporary dress. Just like when the cloth becomes old and worn, you discard for a new set. So Krishna explains like this from many different angles of vision all throughout the second chapter, especially of the Gita. So immediately their attention was focused, a complete turnaround on transcendence. So this is all Srila Prabhupada's mercy. Of course, Krishna's mercy, you could say, but it is Srila Prabhupada's. So Krishna is saying that, well, he'll go on to say that we've appeared many times together, Arjuna. I can remember all of them, but you cannot. We may run into this. People say, well, what is the proof of reincarnation? You can't prove it. But actually, it's a constant factor within the experience of any sane person, practically speaking. Just like we know the verse in the second chapter that Dehinosmin yata dehe kalam yavanam dra tata dehantra paptir durstata namuyate. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood or girlhood to youth to old age, the soul simply passes into another body. A deaf, a dhira, sober person, he's not bewildered by such a change. So this is reincarnation, taking on and off bodies. We all know that we had a body in the womb of our mother, which is drastically different than the one we're inhabiting now, but we're still existing. That one is not existing, that body. And then we had a little boy or girl body, which is no more, but we're still existing. Then an adolescent body, and then whatever body we may be inhabiting now. So this is reincarnation, taking on and off bodies, you could say. Even the medical science has to admit that every so many years all the cells are completely changed, or almost completely. But we're still the same person. Even though we may think differently about the same things as we did when we were 5, hopefully we do, or feel differently about the same things. Even ordinarily speaking, we say, well, I changed my mind about that, or I changed the way I feel about that. But I'm still me, even though these changes are there. So we are that which is remaining constant, whereas everything else is in constant flux or change around us. So in this way we separate our identity from the changes. We are that which is constant, we are not of the changes. The changes are happening around us. Therefore our ultimate self-interest is different than catering to the demands of this ever-changing body, which we are not. It must be necessarily. So what is that interest? And so Srimad Bhagavad-Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, similar such literatures teach us what that interest is, and give us the scope for actually gaining realization of that along the way, in degrees as we progress. So this is the greatest science. Actually, sometimes Prabhupada would call this Krishna consciousness, the perfect theistic science. Now, mostly people are used to using these terms as opposites. If it's theistic or spiritual, it can't be scientific. Or if it's scientific, it doesn't have anything to do with spiritual life. But real spiritual life, real spiritual pursuit is actually a science. There's hypothesis, and then there's experiment with the process, and there's results also along the way. So in that sense, it's also science. And it's the greatest science. And without pursuing this particular science, simultaneous self-realization and God-realization, all the other sciences don't really mean a whole lot. You can gather so much data, so much information, but if you don't even know who you are and what your ultimate or eternal purpose is, then what is the value of all this other so-called knowledge? Practically, it's ignorance. Just like if you had, let's say, 1 billion zeros, what does that add up to? 0. But if you put a 1 in front of all those zeros, it becomes a very significant sum. So that 1 is Krishna, or the pursuance of Krishna consciousness. It becomes something very significant in one's life. Otherwise, we're simply wasting our lives. This human form of life enables us, the consciousness, to expand far enough to inquire into the nature of the absolute truth. So therefore, that's its real purpose, or main purpose. We may share certain activities with the other species, eating, sleeping, mating, defending, but we have an extra facility. Therefore, that makes it special. And we can solve all the problems of life in the human form, especially those of repeated birth, death, disease, and old age, and the concomitant mysteries that come along with that. Those caused by your own body and mind, by natural catastrophes, from other living entities. We can make an ultimate solution to all these problems in the human form of life. So it's very regrettable if we miss this opportunity. So we have to, of course, study on our own and also discuss these things with each other to keep us conscious of this, Krishna conscious. I like that. This is actually progressive life. Strictly speaking, progress means spiritual progress because, again, we're spiritual beings. We're not material beings. We're not of this material world. The ever-changing body is not me. It's like a machine, and I'm like the owner or the driver. There's a difference. And you're not to spend your whole life simply studying the machine. You're to make sure that you take the machine to your destination. Just like you have a car, you just don't study the car all the time. You take advantage of it and take it to your destination. So you take this human form of life to your destination of, again, reviving your unalloyed love for Krishna. Otherwise, the human form is just a temporary form like any other form. But again, the facility of expanded consciousness enables us, tattva brahma jignasa, to inquire into the nature of the absolute truth. And therefore, ideally, the devotee should be always enthralled with this business, always inquiring into the nature of the absolute truth. From authoritative sources, of course. Then we'll get some actual tangible benefit. And we'll become happy in this way, even if you have to struggle. Prabhupada gives one example, just like, materially speaking, just like if you were given the opportunity, some big rich man say, here's a big chest full of gold and jewels and money, and all you have to do is drag it to the bank vault, and if you make it there, it's yours. Now, materially speaking, the harder you have to struggle and strain to do that, materially speaking, the happier you think you are, because that means I'm going to get it. It's going to be mine. So spiritually speaking, you may be struggling, but it's not for nothing. Probably called the struggle in material existence just that, the hard struggle for existence. And what's it all for? Nothing. You don't gain anything. Everything's of a temporary nature. So what is the use? But therefore we can be happy in the struggle in spiritual life, because it's all worthwhile. It's all gain. Sometimes we become even more happy if we have to struggle in this way. In another, Prabhupada described it in another way, just like one is fighting a war. Just like we're fighting with Maya. And what is the question of victory without a good fight? She's not going to just back off. You have to show that you're 100% genuine and strenuously try to pursue the process of Krishna consciousness. And if you and surrender to Krishna, and if you do that and win over her influences, she becomes happy. She's a devotee. She's not an adversary of Krishna. But she's there to test you. How much do you really want this Krishna consciousness? What are you willing to forego, willing to do, etc. Like that. So anyway, perhaps I'll stop here for now. I'll just read the translation once again. Arjuna said, the sun god Viththaleshvar is senior by birth to you. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed this science to him? So again, Arjuna is inquiring on behalf of others. Prabhupada points out in the purport and gives some evidence for this in the 10th chapter.